The movie opens with an elderly man named Burt Munro waking up early in the morning. He heads out to test his motorcycle, but the loud noise annoys his neighbors, who shout at him to keep it down and take care of his lawn. However, their son, Tom, is fascinated by Burt and often visits him in his little garage. One day, Tom drops by and asks Burt about his Christmas plans. Burt replies that he has no plans since he is busy working on his bike. He shares his dream of going to Bonneville Salt Flats, the world's fastest racing course in the USA, to see how fast his motorcycle can go. As they talk, Burt teaches Tom how to make pistons. When Burt asks for a carving knife, Tom agrees to help. He sneaks into his house to grab the knife while hiding it from his mother, then rushes off to school. Later, Tom's mother comes by to retrieve the knife from Burt. Later, Burt heads to the post office to pick up his pension. There, he runs into Fran, a woman he has known for a long time. Burt asks her out on a date on his birthday, and she happily agrees. At home, he gets ready for the birthday party his friends planned by trimming his nails with an angle grinder, typical of his quirky personality. At the party, his friends celebrate him and his work. Suddenly, a group of bikers arrives and asks if he is Burt Munro, the one who rides the Indian motorcycle. When one of the younger bikers criticizes his bike, Burt confidently replies that his bike performs much better than theirs. This sparks a challenge between Burt and the bikers to race their bikes, and Burt quickly agrees to take them on. The next day, Burt heads out with some friends and Fran to cheer him on for the race. The bikers place a bet of $100 on the challenge. When the race begins, Burt struggles at first because his motorcycle does not move. However, with a little push from his friends, he quickly gains speed and overtakes the other bikers. Unfortunately, he does not win as his bike stumbles while trying to make a turn. After the race, Burt hops into Fran's car, where she asks him about the cost of getting to America. Burt mentions that someone told him it would cost $2,000, and he reveals that he has saved up $1,275 till date. Fran offers to help him out, but he declines her offer. She insists on finding other ways to raise the money, but Burt explains that he will not be able to go to America this year because he is still $700 short. He adds that the ship to America leaves in just 5 days, making it difficult to gather the funds in such a short period. Afterwards, they go out for dinner, where Fran suggests that Burt could borrow the money from the bank by using his property as collateral. Once they finish eating, they head back to Burt's house. The next morning, Burt pees in his lemon tree and collects eggs from his chicken before waking up Fran. While they are joking around, Burt suddenly feels a sharp pain in his chest. Fran quickly calls for an ambulance to get him to the hospital. When the ambulance arrives, Tom witnesses the scene and informs his parents. They all rush to see Burt being taken away in the ambulance. At the hospital, the doctor informs Burt that he has experienced an angina attack and has arterial sclerosis, a condition where his heart arteries narrow. Burt asks about the implications, and the doctor tells him that he needs to take it easy and that his days of motorcycling are over. She gives him some pills to take if he experiences any further attacks. After leaving the hospital, he decides to follow Fran's suggestion and seek a loan from the bank using collateral. He meets with the bank manager and explains his situation and plans for the loan. When asked about collateral, Burt initially offers his tools and trophies, but that is turned down. He then offers his property as collateral, which is accepted, and he successfully secures the loan. Back home, as Tom helps Burt with some tasks, Burt shares his plans to leave for Bonneville soon. Burt shows Tom some old photographs, and when Tom asks if he is afraid of crashing, Burt replies that taking risks is what makes life meaningful. He shares a memory of his twin brother, Ernie, who tragically died when a tree fell on him while helping their father. Burt explains that while he sometimes feels nervous, he is not afraid of anything now. He gives the photo album to Tom, asking him to take care of it until he returns. Later, Burt decides to burn his lawn to get rid of the overgrown grass, responding to Tom's parents' complaints about his yard work. As he prepares his bike, Tom joins him and gives Bert his dad's phone number in case he needs help. Tom mentions that his father does not believe Bert can break records, which makes Bert a little upset, but he shakes it off. He tells Tom that pursuing one's dreams is essential to being human. As they head outside, Bert hands Tom the keys to his house, asking him to look after the plants and chickens. As Bert leaves, the entire neighborhood gathers to bid him farewell. While at a petrol station, Bert talks to Fran about the criticism from Tom's dad. He asks her if she believes in him, and Fran replies that winning does not matter to her. She loves him. Just then, the young biker approaches Bert, hands him some money, and drops him off at the ship dock. Bert boards the ship and soon arrives in America. At the security check, he learns he has 6 months to set a new land speed record with his modified Indian motorcycle. He proudly claims that his bike is the fastest in Australia and New Zealand. Once in America, Bert quickly realizes how expensive it is when he pays $29 for a cab fare. He checks into a motel where he meets Tina, a transgender receptionist, who offers him a room at a better rate than most. The next morning, Bert asks Tina to call the shipping company for updates on his motorcycle. After that, she takes him for breakfast and shows him where to find an affordable car. At the rental place, he meets Fernando, who sells him a car for $225 and lets him use his workshop. They spend all night working on the car together. Impressed by Bert's skills, Fernando offers him a job with good pay, but Bert declines, saying he has other goals to pursue, and leaves the next morning. After that, Bert heads back to the motel to ask Tina for directions to the customs office. Tina offers to guide him, and they set off together. At the office, the officers inform Bert that his shipment has been damaged. However, when they check, they find that Bert's motorcycle is completely unharmed, thanks to his careful packing. Following this, Bert begins his journey to Bonneville with his motorcycle secured to his car. However, while driving on the highway, the bike comes loose and falls over, leaving Bert unable to lift it on his own. As he waits for assistance, he gathers some wood to try and attach the bike to the car. Soon, a car pulls up, and the driver introduces himself as Jake, who offers to help Bert. Jake takes Bert to his home, where he spends the night. The next morning, as Bert gets ready to leave, Jake gives him a locket for good luck. Bert's next stop is at a woman named Ada's place, where he notices a yard filled with spare cars. When he approaches her, Ada helps him fix his bike and then takes him to a graveyard to show him her late husband's grave. While they are talking about her husband, a snake slithers near Bert, and just as it looks ready to strike, Ada sees it and pulls him to safety. Bert spends the night at Ada's house and leaves the following morning. After a long ride, Bert stops at a bar for a drink, but soon feels a sharp pain in his chest. He decides to rest in his car, parked by the side of the road. A police officer wakes him up, informing him that he is parked illegally and needs to move. When Bert pulls over to check his engine and refill his tank, a military pilot asks him for a lift since his car has broken down. They hit the road together and chat about their lives. Eventually, they arrive at the Bonneville Salt Flats. Bert expresses his dream of being there, calling it a holy ground because of the many records set in that place. Overcome with emotion, he sheds tears of joy as he stands on the salt flats. Afterward, he drops the pilot off at a motel and spends the night by the frozen lake at Bonneville Salt Flats. As morning arrives, other riders start to gather, and Bert introduces himself to one of them named Jim Moffitt. As the day progresses, the area becomes busier with more bikers and spectators. The race officials tell Bert that he needs to check in, but as soon as he approaches the check-in desk, he is turned away because he did not register in advance. Despite his efforts to explain that he traveled from halfway around the world, they remain unswayed. So, Bert reaches out to Jim for help. He shares his situation with Jim, who talks to the officials and manages to convince them to allow Bert to race. Next, in the inspection area, Bert faces rejection due to safety protocols. The inspection officers cite several issues, including his tires, brakes, parachute, and protective suit. They tell him that his bike is too old and emphasize that he has no safety equipment, like a parachute or proper protective gear, and also mentions that his brakes do not function properly. Two men from Western Ridge approach Bert and invite him to come by their place to enjoy the atmosphere. Bert agrees to visit. Later, while he is working on his bike, he overhears Jim talking to the race officials, who refuse to let Bert and his motorcycle participate in the race. Jim makes an effort to convince them, but the officials remain firm in their decision due to the safety concerns and the age of Bert's bike. After that, Jim approaches Bert while he is polishing the tires with shoe polish to cover up any cracks and make them look new. Jim tells Bert that despite his efforts, he still will not be able to participate in the race. The next day, Bert, with the help of some men, attempts to race his motorcycle secretly, but the officials catch him. They discuss among themselves and, impressed by Bert's determination, decide to make an exception for him. They allow him to participate in a trial run, but with the condition that they will follow him in their vehicles for safety. As the trial begins, Bert demonstrates his skill in handling the bike and quickly leaves the officials behind. After the trial, the officials inform him that he can participate in the race. The men from Western Ridge approach him and ask about the officials' decision. Bert tells them he has been approved to race and asks for a favor. He needs 20 car batteries to help stabilize his bike during the race. He creates a lead brick to stabilize his bike and shares his theory with his friends. After making some adjustments, he tests it and finds another problem. The exhaust pipe is overheating. To address this, his friends suggest wrapping asbestos cloth around his legs for protection. The next day at Bonneville, his friends surprise him by voting him Sportsman of the Year, acknowledging that no one has traveled as far as he has for the Speed Week. Instead of a trophy, the audience decides to give him cash to help him out. As he enters the race, he finds that his feet do not fit properly because of the asbestos cloth around his legs, so he decides to go without it. When the race starts, he begins to set new records, breaking his own times at various distances and impressing everyone watching. However, he struggles with the overheating exhaust pipe, and his bike starts to wobble after reaching a certain speed. On the 8th lap, he reaches an incredible speed of 201.851 miles per hour, but then his bike slips and comes to a rough stop. He notices burns on his skin from the exhaust pipe, but he feels happy because he has achieved his dream. Brunt returns home to a warm welcome from his neighbors. They have mowed his lawn, and Tom has taken excellent care of his house, chickens, and lemon tree. His neighbors feel proud of his achievement. Tom's dad asks about his future plans, and Brunt explains that he will need to keep working if he wants to return to Bonneville, joking that they will still have early morning disturbances. Despite this, Brunt never gives up on modifying his bike for speed records. He goes back to Bonneville 9 times, setting numerous land speed records along the way. His 1967 record for streamlined motorcycles, under 1,000 cc, still stands strong in history.